What's happening, Wolfpack? Just finished the Sunday night games, and I'm out here, man. I'm out here for you guys, ready to record another episode of Market Watch Mondays. A lot of stuff to go over, but before we do, you know what time it is, man. Hit that fucking intro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Just finished watching a pretty dope game, awesome game. Sunday Night Football game was a great flex to get that primetime vision for Kyler Murray versus Russell Wilson, two of the league's best quarterbacks, and a couple of the league's worst defenses. It's pretty interesting. I mean, we basically saw Pete Carroll and Cliff Kingsbury play hot potato in terms of who could lose the game worse. In my opinion, Seahawks probably should have ended it in regulation, but they are cowards and did not allow Russ to try and convert a third down to ice out the game. So ended up paying the price after a couple of missed field goals, an interception, a couple of missed opportunities. Kyler Murray drove him down the field for a game-winning field goal. So yeah, that was exciting. I mean, it was a fantasy gold mine for everyone. Tyler Lockett, boom week. Nobody booms like Tyler Lockett, man. 200 yards, like 10 double-digit catches, 3 touchdowns. Like when Tyler Lockett booms, he really fucking booms. Like he will literally single-handedly win you a week, and it's amazing to see. But enough of that. I want to cover some of the things I want to talk about this week. And number one, when my boy James Robinson has a good game, we've got to talk about him on the fucking episode. And boy, oh boy, did he ball out. He was a complete stud and workhorse this week against a tough Chargers defense that most teams have actually struggled with a ton. He went out there and he was like, nope, fuck that. Like, I don't care if you have a good run defense. 22 totes, 119 yards, a touchdown for 5.4 carries on the ground. Another 4 catches for 18 yards and a touchdown through the air. He looked great. I mean, I've said this all along. I think he's been one of the top performing rookie running backs. CH has also been outstanding, but he's actually on a little bit of a better team, in my opinion. I actually had a back and forth with someone on Twitter who, he said that I said that James Robinson would be even better if he was on the Chiefs. Um, didn't seem like they agreed. But look, man, to each their own. I think James Robinson has actually been incredible, especially given the circumstances of playing on a losing and bad team with with very, very bad game scripts. So what he's been able to do has been incredible. I mean, I really, really like him. And I think if you bought him low for like a second round pick or even like later first as a contender early on in the year, I think he's going to pay dividends. Whether or not he retains the role remains to be seen. But by all accounts, by what I've seen, there's no reason to really pivot away from him. He's kind of like done everything he can to kind of hold that job. One thing to note, shout out to whoever tweeted this at me on Twitter, but Chris Thompson was out this week. And when Chris Thompson was in, he was getting a lot more third down work. So it'll be interesting to see if like this is what they stick with and give him the full workhorse load, or if they try and involve Chris Thompson again. Who knows why? But coaches are irrational like that. Someone also told me that Raquel Armstead has been in the hospital a bunch of times with respiratory issues. Don't want to hear that, man. Hopefully he's recovering well. But from a fan's perspective, that means he's probably not coming back. And Divine or Devin, Ezigbo, whoever you out there that were like worried about Divine Ezigbo coming back and threatening James Robinson, clearly also not a factor at all. So yeah, I mean, it's wheels up for James Robinson. So keep riding him. Like I've always said, if you're a rebuilder, you could trade him for a 2020 first. That's still a nice deal that I would take, even today after his blow up game, because if you're in a rebuild, like I think it's just like good to lock in that value. But if you can get more, even better. But if you're in a contender or if you're in a redraft league, just don't trade James Robinson, man. Just keep riding him, man. Championships always Drake memes, winning trades. So that's my philosophy, anyways. But aside from that, I want to talk about quarterbacks a little bit this week, because what we've seen this year is it almost feels like if you don't have a higher end quarterback, man, you are struggling. You are struggling. And when I say higher end quarterback, I don't mean like Mahomes and Lamar, because even in single QB leagues, they were going way too high. For me, like in the second, third rounds, I'll never draft a QB that high. But what I did a lot of this year was I took a lot of the quarterbacks in that middle section, that tier 2 of Watson, Kyler, and Dak. Rest in peace. Hopefully, wishing him a speedy recovery. But yeah, Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson is what I have a lot of, even in best ball, because they were falling into like the 6, sometimes 7th, 8th rounds, which is just like people are taking late round QB way too wild this year, which is why I capitalize on that. And it's kind of working out a little bit. But like in Superflex, obviously these guys went a lot earlier as well. But it definitely feels like, the top end quarterbacks are giving you a pretty significant point advantage this year compared to years prior. Like, they're averaging like in the high 20 to 30 points, whereas the mid tier QBs are more averaging like the low 20s to high teens. That's a pretty significant advantage, even in a single QB league. Like having, 4 to 5 points per game advantage is like pretty hard to make up for any position. So I want to talk about like why that's the case, right? If you think about, 2, 3 years ago, right? If you're looking at the quarterback position, the reason why like late round quarterback works is because like not everyone was onto like the Konami code. Like not everyone was targeting rushing quarterbacks, right? But what you have now is like the Konami code is basically like, the Konami code to like late round QB is like what late round QB was to like early round QB like years ago in terms of like the progression, right? Like Konami code QB was like that next progression, and the way it's developed and the way that it's been captured by mainstream, the way that it's, happening across all your leagues is pretty mainstream now. So like that advantage, if you don't have a Konami code quarterback, feels like you are starting from significantly behind the eight ball, especially because like before there was maybe like 4 or 5 like tops 4 or 5 Konami code QBs that were actually really good in the league. But now there's like 10 to 12 of them. So like if you don't have one in Superflex, if someone else has like two and you're sitting there with a couple of pocket statue passers, you are definitely starting from behind the eight ball. So it's a bit of a challenge. So I think quarterbacks are going to start seeing a boost in value. But more than that, like this year in particular, it is an extremely pass happy league. I don't remember if I talked about this on the podcast before, but I might have mentioned on Twitter. But because of like the no off season, the no training camp, and all that stuff, and the shortened training camp, like the expectation was that you're going to get a much more pass heavy and high scoring offensive based league this year, right? And the reason why that is because if you think back to like when there was like the holdout and they had the shortened season, which is like what this is probably most comparable to in terms of like shortened season and like shortened training and all that stuff. That was also a very high scoring year, and it's because like defenses like, just don't really have time to like prepare and like really like adjust. Like offenses kind of just come out and can go gung ho and go like guns blazing. So I think that's like really gonna like artificially inflate up all the fantasy production for this year, especially for quarterbacks. And I think I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm not fully into this, but I think what that means is you can probably sell high on a lot of the top end quarterbacks after this season. At least that's what I'm gonna be looking to do. I'm gonna be looking to try and sell high on guys like Kyler Murray, guys like Deshaun Watson, guys like Russell Wilson, and try and trade down. Try and trade down and get like an asset back. I talk about a lot about that in like wide receivers and stuff like that. But like if you look at what's going on right now, like I mean, Russell Wilson is playing at elite level. Kyler Murray's playing at elite level. He put up like 41 points this week. But what I would much rather have is like if I could take Kyler Murray and trade down to Justin Herbert, the God. Shout out to Justin Herbert, man. I've never missed on someone as hard as I'd missed on Justin Herbert. Luckily, I still have some shares because like when he fell, everyone was kind of missing on him, and he was falling to late first of super flex drafts. And when that happens, like you just automatically have to pick him up because of the scarcity value there alone. But like he is balling out. He is operating at a very, very elite efficiency for a rookie. Like through his first 7 games, like the company is keeping, he is like top. We're talking like top 5, I think top 5 like all time in terms of efficiency on his like yards per attempt. He is in very elite company, and that bodes really well for him looking forward. And I think what you're going to get, and the reason why I think you're still going to be able to acquire him is because the majority of people are still kind of like scared to jump in too early and react to someone as young as him, as someone as young as a CD Lamb, as young as Justin Jefferson, and they're hesitant to move them so far up the ranks because they like want to see more, right? They always want to see more proof, and I totally get that, right? Like a lot of like experience and very very good like dynasty players, like that's their approach. For me, I'm always trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve and bet on the future, and I'm willing to pay a premium, right? And the way I think about it is this: like if Justin Herbert right now, if I have him as a like top 5 quarterback, right? But the rest of a lot of people aren't willing to move him that high and still have him as like only a top 10 or like just like a back end QB1. I'm willing to pay like that QB7 price because I think that down the line he'll hit that top 5 value or he'll hit that top 3 value later. So you're prepaying for some of the gains, but you're prepaying for the gains to realize the remainder of the gains, right? And it kind of goes back to my concept of like buying high. And the reason why I'm so comfortable with buying high sometimes is because I think there's a lot more unrealized gains, right? Like no one's gonna be mad if you bought high on Amazon, after its run in 2018 because it had another massive run going forward, right? And people are scared to buy into crypto now, for example, because they've seen the run and they've seen the charts that goes up and to the right, and like in their mind, like the human psyche just makes you think that like it's gonna come back down, and you want to wait for that buy low point. But for me, if I really believe in an asset, I'm willing to jump in right there because like who knows like where it goes after that, right? It could go even up further to the right. So I don't want to miss out on those gains. And that's why like I would love to grab someone like Justin Herbert. And if I like after the season, if I can take a Lamar Jackson, a Patrick Mahomes, a Kyler Murray, like those tier 1 elite quarterbacks, and I can use them and I can trade down on quarterback and get a piece back, I think I'm going to do it because I think this season has really inflated the value of super elite quarterbacks. And I think Justin Herbert is going to join that group, but most people will wait on evidence for him to do it before they actually credit him with that. But for me, I'm just kind of going to jump in there. I mean, both him and Joe Burrow, to be honest. Like if I can get anything significant, like if 2021 first or like another wide receiver piece or something like that for people that are really overvaluing those, not overvaluing, but are really valuing those elite quarterbacks, I'm going to do it like 10 times out of 10 because I love getting that piece and I love trading down. That I think that's like the easiest way because like assets like Mahomes, assets like Lamar, assets like Kyler, and even Watson to a degree, more or less have peaked, right? So the ones that haven't peaked is are the ones I'm looking to trade down on. Depending on how Tua does, for example, he's another option to go down. But yeah, I think something that I'm going to be exploring a lot this offseason is to try and trade down on the quarterbacks. And I might even do some of it in the midseason, especially on teams where I'm not necessarily competing because, look, I think that trading down is just like one of the best strategies that you have available in your tool set. All right. So that's another thing. Quarterbacks, extremely high value this season. I think that's going to lead to them being overvalued in the offseason because typically people psychologically are trying to chase what's already happened and not think what's ahead. And if we don't have another shortened season next year, obviously defenses are going to adjust, like the rules are going to adjust, and just like everything I think is going to make things regress back to more normal where like the gap between the elite quarterbacks and the middle tier quarterbacks are going to shorten a little bit. And and like another thing is like in that middle round of quarterbacks, you still have like really good guys, guys like Justin Herbert, guys like Joe Burrow, guys like my boy Ryan fucking Tannehill, who's been balling out of his mind, MVP candidate, brought his team back in a position to tie. The kicker fucking blows it, man. You hate to see it, but he still put up a pretty productive day for fantasy purposes, despite playing against the league's top defense. So, yeah, if you can trade down for those elite quarterbacks into the middle tier, do it. I'm going to be exploring it all off season. And obviously, if you're like an elite contender, you don't want to like give up that edge in season from guys like Kyler and guys like Russ. But yeah, in the off season, definitely explore that. And then the last thing I want to really talk about is I've been talking a lot about like rebuilding, right? And rebuilders, how to rebuild. And what I want to do a little bit now is like, look, we don't always want to talk about losing, right? Like I'm sure there's many of you out there that are also winning and you want to know what to do in this time. So I want to shift the focus a little bit to contenders and give you a little insight into what I do as a contender at this stage in the season. And a lot of people like to risk it and play like, play pretty dangerously, I think. But for me, if I'm a contender, I'm always trying to think ahead and protect myself, right? So even if I don't need a quarterback, and let's say I only have two quarterbacks, let's say you only have like two elite ones, like Kyler Murray and like Lamar Jackson or something like that, right? I'm looking to trade for a third quarterback just in case. Just in case. Like what happens in playoff week if Kyle, like one of Kyler Murray's O-line gets like COVID, right? And you can't start him, then you're fucked, right? It's not worth that risk. And it's the same thing on like the running back side. Even though I don't need running backs, as a contender, I'm constantly trying to acquire depth pieces because I believe that paying the premium insurance ahead of time, it's like insurance in real life, right? It's always better to pay a little bit of insurance, life insurance, house insurance on the big ticket items, than to wait until your house fucking burns down and try and rebuild it. It'll always cost you more, right? And the same thing in Dynasty, because if you wait till you need a quarterback, or if you wait till one of your running backs get hurt and you need a running back, people aren't stupid, right? They can see your rosters and be like, oh wow, this guy really needs a running back, so I can charge him a premium, right? So same thing, same concept. Like, let's say the max value someone charges you for a running back or a quarterback is here, the minimum value is here. I'm willing to pay like slightly ahead of the minimum value to avoid that big chunk of cost later on down the road. And I think that's a concept that gets overlooked by a lot of people. People who are contending and sitting in first place, they like rest on their laurels and are like super happy about it. And like, yeah, look at me, like I'm king of the castle. For me, like when I'm really fucking contending, like I very rarely have draft picks on like true contending teams where I'm like top elite. Because I would have like traded those draft picks away already to really build the depth on my team so that I can sustain injuries, so I can sustain bye weeks, so I can sustain unforeseen circumstances. And I think that's something that people don't do enough. And when they don't do it, they pay the ultimate price later on down the line. And for me, like I said, I'm willing to pay those minimum increments. So what are examples of some of those things that you can do, right? I think you can get someone like Teddy Bridgewater, right? Teddy Bridgewater is an extremely cheap asset. People, for whatever reason, don't like him, even though he's been producing. You can get him easily for a first, if not a second or multiple seconds, right? Someone like a Kirk Cousins, whatever reason, everyone hates him, but he's stuck there, man. He's a above average starter. People love to hate on him, but he produces for fantasy and he'll have a couple stinky games. But look, if you're trying to build depth, he's someone that you can add onto your teams for very, very cheap, right? Ben Roethlisberger, another great super flex dynasty asset. He's been balling out of control. He threw a couple picks today, but by all means, like when I've been looking at Ben, like I think he's playing some of his best football. So another great cheap asset to add. Tom Brady, another cheap asset to add. Like they're gonna bring in Antonio Brown, and that offense is humming on all cylinders, and they have a great defense as well. So they're playing in a relatively tough division. And if I think they're gonna be scoring a lot of points. And Tom Brady, over the last little stretch, it's like he looks like his prime Tom Brady on a fucking revenge tour to prove he doesn't need Bill Belichick to win. So those are some great guys on the quarterback side. A few weeks ago, I would have said Ryan Tannehill, but he's blown up a little bit. I think he still can be had at a value. I honestly think you can still probably acquire Ryan Tannehill for a single first from some people because people love to hold on their priorities. And if you're a contender, even if you have studs at quarterback, if you can acquire Ryan Tannehill for a first, you click the fucking smash button every single time, right? So those are some quarterbacks you go after, right? What are some examples of running backs? So in one of my super flex leagues a couple weeks ago, I paid up like a early third, like probably the 3.01. So basically a second round pick in your one QB leagues for Miles Gaskins. And I didn't really need him, right? I have in that league, I have Dalvin Cook, I have Miles Sanders, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I have Joe Mixon, I have James Robinson. So like I have a bunch of running backs. Granted, some of them are out, but like not all of them are at the time when I made the trade. I didn't need Miles Gaskins, but like a third round pick is not going to serve me as well as a potential workhorse starting running back who I can use in my bye weeks, who I can plug into my starting lineup when the going gets rough or players get hurt, like when Miles Sanders was out, for example, right? That's a great asset to get. It's very attainable, and people are, especially rebuilders, are willing to sell him for cheap because they think that he's gone, right? Just like with James Robinson, when you have no draft capital, according to fantasy Twitter, like if you have no draft capital, it doesn't matter how much you are balling, you are going to be replaced next season. So take advantage of that, right? That is already baked into the price. So just pay the fair market value because all that leaves for you is one, protection, and two, upside in the off chance that they don't sign someone. And in the case of Miles Gaskins, I don't like, similar to James Robinson, I honestly don't know if they draft someone because the Dolphins have proven to be very smart when the front office in terms of investing their draft picks, right? This year, everyone thought they're going to draft Swift. Everyone thought they're going to take Swift with like a first round, second round pick. What do? They completely ignored the running back position and relied on a forgotten man in Miles Gaskins and signed a couple guys through free agency. So same thing with James Robinson. Like, look, like if you can take advantage of these guys, definitely do, and prepay for a guy like James Robinson, prepay for guys like Miles Gaskins, because running backs are really hard to come by Workhorse running backs are even harder to come by, even if they are on slightly shittier teams. So that's a great example. I think if Myles Gaskins is on any rebuilding roster out there and you're a true contender, you should be going out and grabbing him. What are some other examples? I think on the wide receiver side, Keenan Allen is someone that I'm trying to grab. It's going to be hard to get now because Justin Herbert's balling out, but we've been saying all offseason to grab Keenan Allen. And if you need depth, you should be going after a guy like Keenan Allen. I think he offers great depth. He offers wide receiver one upside. He is a target fucking hog, especially with Eckler out. So he's going to be continued to ball out for the next few weeks. So you should be taking full advantage of that. So those are just some examples, a little bit of insight into how I prepare at this time of the season as a contender. Do not rest on your laurels, man, because I promise you other teams are going to be trying to come for your head. And if they're not, good. Still don't rest on your laurels and continue to extend that league, man. Continue to extend your own lead to kind of build that cushion for yourself and build that safety net. Because at the end of the day, man, we're trying to win. And people always talk about fantasy being luck. And look, I totally agree. There is a significant component of luck. If you lose Christian McCaffrey, if you lose Saquon Barkley, chances are you're fucked, right? But a lot of it, I think luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? This entire offseason, what have I preached the entire time? Is to build depth on your teams. So in any contending team, I've been building fucking depth like no tomorrow. And on teams that I've lost Saquon Barkley, on teams that I've lost Saquon Barkley and Chubb, guess what? I'm still a contender. On teams that I've lost Barkley, Eckler, and Chubb, guess what? I am still a contender because I built the necessary depth and I prepaid way early on before those injuries happened to prepare for instances like this to in order to overcome and survive, right? And that's what you need to do. That is the mindset you need to have because this is a fucking fickle game and players are going down left and right every single week. And with COVID on top of that shit, you never know what's going to happen. So again, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You cannot control the opportunity side, but what you can absolutely control is the preparation side. So if you're trying to win and if you want to be a winner and have the Wolfpack mindset, man, dedicate yourself and dedicate time to fucking preparation. And the way you do it is to make some of the moves that I told you to make in this episode right now. Go right now after this episode, send out offers. Myles Gaskins is on a buy. Nobody's thinking about him, right? His price has not changed. So go out and acquire him. He's very fucking attainable. And all those guys are really, really attainable. So make sure you go out there, fire offers. If you are a contender, a true elite top 1 to 3 team contender, these are the moves you need to make to win. These are the moves that I found to be successful. And at the end of the day, look, you still might lose in the championships because one of your players duds out. But look, at the end of the day, that can happen to anyone. But at least you got there through preparation and you basically set yourself up with the opportunity to win. And that's all that matters, right? So that's all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you enjoyed, make sure you smash that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and leave a comment what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see going forward. I'm always looking for feedback for Market Watch Mondays in this channel in general. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. I try to get back to people as much as I can in terms of like questions through my DMs or, when you reply to my threads. I love engaging with people. I love engaging with the community. I truly appreciate it. You have no idea how much it helps us when you do that. So please, again, make sure you subscribe, like, and follow. And I'll be back at you again later this week for all the feature film stuff and all the other videos. And then back to you again next week for another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Wolfpack out.